Leo moved to the quiet wooded valley in late autumn, a time when the air turned crisp and neighbors began buttoning up their homes for the long winter ahead. His property was a narrow strip at the end of a rough road, mostly overlooked because it was thick with a dense grove of pine and cedar trees. Most folks in the area, like Sam and Rita who lived in the tidy modern house across the way, preferred cleared land with open views. They watched with amused curiosity as Leo, a quiet man with work-worn hands, walked the grove day after day, seemingly doing more looking than building. The laughter, subtle at first, began when Leo finally broke ground. Instead of clearing the trees to erect a traditional cabin like everyone else, he did the unthinkable. He wove his home into the grove itself. The construction was strange and slow. He set pillars deep into the earth around the existing trunks, building a raised platform that nestled among the trees. The walls seemed to grow around the pine and cedar, leaving spaces for the larger trunks to pass right through the structure. Sam, watching from his driveway while sipping morning coffee, would chuckle to his wife Rita. "That fellow's building a treehouse for giants," he'd say. "Or a very fancy bird blind. He'll be frozen solid by January." Rita would nod, a touch of pity in her eyes. They were practical people. Their own home had top-quality insulation, a new furnace, and a backup generator. Leo's project looked like something from a child's fairy tale, not a serious dwelling for the harsh mountain winters. Other neighbors, like Tom the retired engineer, would drive by slowly, shaking his head at the unconventional design. The consensus was clear. Leo was a dreamer, and an impractical one at that. The grove, they reasoned, would block what little winter sun there was and make his land perpetually cold and damp. The trees themselves, they whispered, would wreck his roof in the first heavy snow. Leo paid no mind to the quiet ridicule. His work was methodical and focused. He installed not thick fiberglass bats, but a strange, sleek paneling that hugged the interior walls. He fitted triple-paned windows in the odd, asymmetrical spaces between the tree trunks. Most curiously, he buried a network of slender, fluid-filled pipes in a deep trench that ran from the back of his cabin into the heart of the wooded slope behind it. Tom, the engineer, saw this and theorized it was a misguided attempt at a geothermal pump, but one done on the cheap and in the wrong location. "You need a big, open field for that to work efficiently," Tom declared at the small local diner. "All those tree roots will suck the heat right out. The man's wasting his time." The first true cold snap arrived in early December, a vicious plunge that turned breath into clouds and made the old timbers of the valley houses creak. Furnaces across the neighborhood roared to life. Sam and Rita's power bill began its seasonal climb. One evening, under a sky glittering with icy stars, Sam took his dog out and looked toward Leo's place. He expected to see a plume of smoke from a chimney, or the glow of what he assumed would be space heaters in the windows. He saw neither. The cabin was dark, its windows reflecting only the moonlight. A shiver that had nothing to do with the cold went down Sam's spine. The place looked completely abandoned, and he felt a sudden pang of worry for the peculiar new neighbor. The next morning, bundled in a heavy coat, Sam decided to check under the guise of borrowing a tool. He crunched through the frost-covered grass to Leo's front door, which was crafted from reclaimed wood and fitted neatly around a young cedar trunk. He knocked, half expecting no answer. The door opened almost immediately, and a wave of warmth, not dry and forced like furnace heat, but soft and organic, washed over Sam. Leo stood there in a simple cotton shirt and trousers, smiling. "Morning, Sam. Cold one, isn't it?" Sam was too stunned to speak for a moment. The air inside felt like a perfect spring day. He could see past Leo into the main living space. Sunlight, filtered through the tall, needled branches, dappled the wooden floor. A small pot of water was steaming gently on a countertop, not from a stove, but just from the ambient warmth of the room. It was then Sam noticed the quiet. The oppressive, grinding hum of his own furnace was absent here. There was only the soft sigh of the wind through the grove and the faint, pleasant scent of cedar and warm wood. How are you heating this place?" Sam finally managed to ask, his voice barely a whisper. Leo's smile widened just a touch. "Come on in. I'll show you." He led Sam to a simple digital thermometer mounted on a central post. Its glowing numbers read a steady, impossible 69 F. Sam's own thermostat, he knew, was set to 68, but the furnace struggled to maintain 64 in this deep cold, and the drafts near the windows made it feel much colder. "I'm not exactly heating it," Leo said, gesturing around. "The grove and the hill are doing most of the work. The trees are a windbreak, a thermal mass, and a solar collector all in one. The system just helps move the warmth around." Sam looked at the cozy, tree-embraced room, then back at his own house across the way, which he knew felt drafty and dry despite the furnace running constantly. The laughter he had shared with his wife felt hollow and foolish now. This was no silly treehouse. This was something else entirely. As he stepped back out into the biting cold, the contrast was so violent it took his breath away. He walked home not with a borrowed tool, but with a burning, unsettled curiosity and the first seeds of a chilling realization. While they had all been laughing, Leo had been listening to the trees, the land, and a wisdom they had all forgotten. And now, as the real winter loomed, they were the ones who might be left out in the cold. Sam's visit to Leo's cabin became a secret he carried uneasily. He told Rita about the warmth, about the shocking thermometer reading, but he downplayed his own growing sense of awe, masking it with practical skepticism. "He's probably got some expensive, hidden mini-split system running on a buried propane tank," he reasoned over dinner, the hum of their furnace a constant backdrop. "It's a trick. It won't last." But Rita saw the look in his eyes. She had seen the cabin's dark, quiet exterior that same frigid night. A week later, when a historic winter storm was forecast to slam the valley with foot-deep snow and temperatures plunging below zero, her practical nature overrode her pride. "Maybe we should just check on him," she suggested. "If his power goes out in that structure, he could be in real trouble." Sam agreed, relieved for an excuse to return. They arrived at Leo's door just as the first thick flakes began to fall. This time, Leo welcomed them both inside. The contrast was even more profound than Sam remembered. The cabin was a sanctuary of serene, even warmth. A single, small clay pot on a low table held a cluster of green ferns, thriving without a single sunbeam directly hitting them. There was no smell of burnt fuel or hot metal, just clean air and the subtle fragrance of wood. Tom, the retired engineer, had also been wrestling with the puzzle. After hearing Sam's initial, vague account, his professional curiosity had become an obsession. He had studied schematics and thermal dynamics his whole career, and Leo's setup defied his logic. Armed with a notepad and a friendly demeanor, he arrived at Leo's just as Sam and Rita were shedding their heavy coats. Leo, with a patient calm, seemed to have been expecting them all. "You're all welcome," he said. "The storm is coming. It's better to be curious together than cold alone." Tom got straight to the point, his eyes scanning the room. No visible heat source. Triple-pane windows, yes, excellent insulation. But this thermal mass, he knocked gently on an interior wall. It made a soft, dense sound. "This isn't standard drywall. It's phase-change material," Leo said simply, as if describing plywood. "Sealed in the panels. It absorbs heat when the room gets a little too warm, from cooking, or my own body heat, or even the weak winter sun through the branches, and releases it back when the temperature drops a degree. It's a buffer." Tom's pencil froze on his notepad. Phase-change materials were cutting-edge, expensive tech, used in high-efficiency labs, not in rustic cabins. "But the energy input," Tom stammered. "The system needs an initial source. A heat pump. Where is it?" Leo led them to a small, closet-like utility room. It was eerily quiet. Inside was a sleek, compact unit about the size of a suitcase, connected to a manifold of the slender pipes he had buried. A small circulator pump hummed almost inaudibly. "It is a heat pump," Leo explained. "But it's not fighting the cold air. It's connected to the closed-loop network in the hillside. The grove and the deep soil there never get as cold as the open air. The tree's root systems create a stable thermal zone. The pump only has to move heat a short distance, from just below the frost line, through the pipes in the floor, and into the cabin. It uses very little electricity. Tom's face went through a series of transformations: disbelief, dawning comprehension, and finally, sheer professional admiration. You're using the entire wooded hillside as a low-grade thermal battery, and the trees as a living insulation jacket. He looked out the window at the thickening snowfall, already beginning to blanket the grove. The snow on those branches, it's adding another layer of insulation on the roof. My God, you're not just building in the grove. You're collaborating with it. The truth of Tom's words settled over the small group. Sam thought of his own house, a standalone box exposed on all sides to the scouring wind, its furnace sucking in freezing air to heat it, only to lose it through poorly sealed windows. Rita thought of their soaring utility bill, a monthly testament to their struggle against the elements. Just then, the lights in the cabin flickered once, and went out. A collective gasp filled the room. Outside, the world was swallowed by the white fury of the storm. "Ah," Leo said, his voice still calm. "The transformer down the road often fails in heavy, wet snow like this." Sam fumbled for his phone, turning on the flashlight. "Right. We should go. Our generator will kick in. You should come with us. You can't stay here without power." In the stark beam of the phone's light, Leo's smile was gentle. He walked to the wall and pressed a small button. A soft, battery-powered LED panel came on, providing ample gentle light. He then pointed to the digital thermometer. Its numbers, powered by a small internal battery, still glowed. They watched as the temperature dipped from 69 degrees Fahrenheit to 68.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and then held perfectly steady. "The pump has stopped," Leo said. "But the heat is already in the walls, in the floor, in the thermal mass of the trees themselves. It will take days for that to dissipate, long after the power is restored. The system is designed to coast." In the silent, warm, dark cabin, illuminated only by the soft LED glow and the eerie white light from the snow outside, the three neighbors stood in a humbled stillness. The only sound was the muffled lull of the wind in the grove, a sound that was no longer a threat, but a partner. Their laughter was a distant memory, replaced by a profound and chilling realization. Leo wasn't just surviving the winter. He was, in a very real sense, barely even noticing it. And as they prepared to trudge back through the blizzard to their own vulnerable power-dependent homes, they each carried the same heavy thought. They had built walls to keep nature out, while Leo had built a home that invited it in to protect him. The power outage lasted for 2 long days. For Sam and Rita, and indeed for the entire valley, it was a period of grim endurance. Their backup generator chugged through expensive fuel, fighting a losing battle against the creeping cold. They huddled in their living room, swaddled in blankets, watching their breath fog the air even as the furnace ducked beside them blew lukewarm air. The modern house felt like a leaky ship in a frozen sea. Tom, across the road, fared little better with his own generator. His engineering knowledge offered no comfort against the physical reality of the deep freeze. Their eyes, again and again, were drawn to the tree grove. Leo's cabin, visible through the skeletal branches of the deciduous trees at the edge of his property, showed no plume of wood smoke, no flash of lantern light, no sign of struggle. It simply existed, a dark, silent shape nestled peacefully in the white blanketed arms of the pines. That quiet, unyielding presence became a constant, nagging rebuke. When the power finally sputtered back on, and the valley began its slow, groaning thaw, a different kind of chill settled over the neighbors. The laughter had curdled into a sour mixture of envy, regret, and burning curiosity. The storm had proven Leo was no lucky dreamer. He was a visionary who had executed a perfect plan. The community diner, usually abuzz with chatter about snowplows and sports, now held hushed conversations dominated by one topic. "He must have spent a fortune," one man grumbled over his coffee. "Those phase change panels? That's space station stuff." "Or he's got a secret subsidy," another suggested, voice low. "Some green energy grant the rest of us didn't know about." Tom listened to these speculations, his earlier admiration hardening into a resolve. He was a man of science, and mystery offended him. His friendly curiosity was now a determined investigation. He began taking long walks with his dog, his path always skirting the boundary of Leo's property. He used a laser thermometer from his garage, pointing it at Leo's exterior walls from a distance. The readings were baffling. The outer walls were nearly the same temperature as the ambient air, showing no significant heat loss. The secret was locked inside the cabin's very fabric. Sam, meanwhile, was grappling with a more personal frustration. His monthly utility statement had arrived, a staggering figure that represented their 2-day battle with the storm. Staring at the number, then out his window at Leo's serene grove, he felt a surge of helpless anger. It wasn't fair. He had followed all the rules, built a proper house, and was being punished for it. Leo, who broke every conventional rule, was living in perfect, cheap comfort. This collective tension found its focus on a single, physical point, the buried trench containing Leo's network of pipes. It ran from the back of his cabin into the communal wooded hillside, land that, while on Leo's deed, felt like a shared resource to the old-timers. The unseen, mysterious loop became a symbol of Leo's advantage. Whispers started, born of cold nights and high bills. What if he's drawing heat from the whole watershed? What if he's destabilizing the ground? The logic was flawed, but fear rarely needs logic. One afternoon, under a brittle, sunny sky, Sam found Tom standing at the edge of his property, staring at the faint depression in the snow that traced the path of the buried pipes. "It doesn't add up, Sam," Tom said, not turning around. "Even with the tech, the efficiency he's getting, it's too perfect. There's a variable he's not mentioning." "Maybe we should just ask him," Sam replied, though his tone lacked conviction. "He already showed us," Tom said, frustration edging his voice. "But he didn't tell us everything. Nobody just does this." Their conversation was interrupted by the crunch of boots on snow. Leo was approaching, carrying a basket of kindling. He nodded to them, his expression open but unreadable. Tom seized the moment, his engineering pride overriding politeness. "Leo, your system's coefficient of performance must be off the charts. But the soil temperature data for this area, it shouldn't support this level of exchange. What's your source?" Leo stopped, setting the basket down. He looked at Tom, then at Sam, and finally at the grove. He seemed to be weighing a decision. "It's not just the soil, Tom," Leo said, his voice quiet. "And it's not a secret. It's a relationship. The trees, their root systems create a symbiotic fungal network underground. It generates a small amount of biological heat. More importantly, the grove creates a microclimate. The thick canopy traps a layer of still air, the needles mulch the ground, preventing deep frost. My system doesn't harvest heat. It participates in a cycle that's already here." Tom blinked, his scientific mind wrestling with the poetic explanation. "You're talking about marginal gains. Negligible effects." "Are they negligible?" Leo asked, gesturing to his cabin. "You measured the results. You felt them. You dismiss the whispers of the land as negligible, while you listen to the roar of the furnace. I chose to listen to the whispers." He picked up his basket and turned to go, then paused. "The trench, the pipes, they are just veins. The heart," he said, pointing to the dense stand of pines and cedars, "is the grove. It always has been." As Leo walked back to his home, Sam and Tom stood in silence. Leo's words had disarmed Tom's technical inquisition, leaving him with a concept he couldn't quantify. For Sam, it sparked a different understanding. It wasn't about secret technology or hidden money. It was about a fundamental choice, to see the forest as an obstacle to be cleared, or as a partner to be joined. But the seed of communal suspicion had been sown too deeply. Later that evening, Sam overheard a conversation at the general store. A few neighbors, emboldened by the lingering cold and their own discomfort, were talking about the legalities of subsurface structures and shared resources. They spoke of bringing it up at the next county planning meeting, of requiring impact assessments. Sam walked home in the deepening twilight, the cheerful lights of houses looking suddenly fragile. He looked at the dark silhouette of the tree grove. Leo wasn't just living in a warm house, he was living in a different idea of the world. And Sam realized, with a jolt, that the true battle wasn't against the winter anymore. It was between two ways of being. One that sought to dominate a hostile environment, and one that sought to harmonize with a living system. The valley was now coldly divided, and the storm brewing was one of human nature, far more unpredictable and dangerous than any blizzard. The meeting at the county planning office was set for a Tuesday morning. Word had spread, fueled by cold nights and simmering resentment. A small group of neighbors, led by a vocal man named Carl who lived 2 properties over from Leo, had formally lodged a complaint. They cited unpermitted subsurface excavation and potential diversion of shared natural resources, their language dry and legal, masking the raw emotion beneath. Sam and Rita sat in the back row of the small, fluorescent-lit room, feeling like traitors for their secret fascination with Leo's home. Tom sat stiffly beside them, his engineer's ethics warring with his need for order. Leo arrived last. He wore the same simple work clothes and carried a single, slim folder. He did not look at the group of neighbors who had gathered against him, but took a seat alone at the front, facing the planning board's table. The air in the room was thick with tension, far colder than the chill outside. Carl spoke first, laying out the grievance. The structure is non-conforming. The excavation alters groundwater flow. His system is drawing thermal energy from a hillside that affects the whole microecology, potentially to the detriment of surrounding properties. He presented a petition with 12 signatures. It was a performance of civic concern, but his eyes glittered with vindication. The board chairwoman, a weary-looking woman named Joan, turned to Leo. "Mr. Leo, how do you respond to these concerns?" Leo stood. He opened his folder, not to sheaves of legal paperwork or engineered drawings, but to a single, blown-up photograph. He placed it on the table for the board to see. It was an aerial infrared image of the valley, taken by a satellite during the peak of the recent storm. The room leaned forward. The image was a tapestry of blues and blacks, with spots of angry, hot red and white. The red blobs were the traditional houses, Sam's, Tom's, Carl's, bleeding heat into the atmosphere in vivid, wasteful plumes. They looked like wounds on the landscape. And then there was Leo's property. The grove appeared as a cohesive, deep purple mass, slightly warmer than the frozen blue fields around it, but with no violent heat signature. At its heart, the cabin was a soft, gentle green, a stable, contained island of warmth. It wasn't leaching heat, it was holding it. The visual evidence was undeniable. While the other homes screamed their energy loss into the void, Leo's home whispered, nestled in a pocket of natural stability. "This is the impact," Leo said, his voice calm but carrying to every corner of the silent room. "My system removes almost no energy from the shared environment. It gently circulates what is already present and protected by the grove. The real diversion," he continued, pointing to the flaring red spots on the image, "is happening there. That is fossil fuel, converted to heat and ejected into the air, gone forever. My home uses less electricity in a month than a standard refrigerator. The excavation is a shallow trench for sealed pipes, less disruptive than a septic field. I followed the building code for auxiliary structures. My permit is here." He placed a stamped document next to the photograph. The board members passed the infrared image around, their expressions shifting from bureaucratic neutrality to keen interest. Tom stood up, unable to stay seated. "As an engineer," he began, his voice hoarse, "I came here skeptical. I thought there was a trick. The trick is that there is no trick." He addressed the board. "What he's done isn't a violation. It's an innovation. A revelation. We called it a treehouse because we couldn't understand it. That photo shows we've been looking at it backwards. His house isn't the problem. Ours are." Carl's face flushed. "That's just a picture. It doesn't prove anything about long-term effects on the water table." "I can prove it," Leo said quietly. He turned to face the small crowd of neighbors for the first time. "My door has always been open. Not to show off, but to share. You were curious once, before you became afraid. That offer still stands. Come and see. Bring your own thermometers. Measure the soil. The answers are in the grove, not in this room. The meeting ended not with a ruling, but with an adjournment. The board, visibly intrigued, requested a site visit. The legal momentum Carl had built evaporated in the face of the stark, colorful truth of the infrared image and Leo's quiet invitation. The following Saturday, under a clear winter sky, something unexpected happened. Not a protest, but a pilgrimage. Sam and Rita were the first to walk up the path, carrying not complaints, but a notebook. Tom came with his laser thermometer and soil probes. Even Carl came, lagging behind, his defiance softened by a nagging need to see for himself. Leo welcomed them all. He showed them everything, the phase change walls, the tiny, efficient pump, the data logs of his minimal power use. He walked them through the grove, pointing out how the snow lay evenly on the boughs, creating the insulating blanket, how the evergreen canopy broke the wind into a gentle sigh. He had them feel the temperature difference between the air in the open field and the still, cool but not cold air under the trees. He was not a magician, but a translator, explaining the language of the place they all shared. Standing in the living room, at a steady 69 degrees while the winter sun glinted outside, the final barrier broke. The warmth was no longer a taunt, it was a lesson. Rita touched the wooden wall, where a cedar trunk grew through it. You didn't build a cabin in the woods, she said, wonder in her voice. You helped the woods build a cabin. Leo nodded. It holds me, as I try to hold it. The change in the valley was gradual but profound. The laughter was gone, replaced by a new, thoughtful silence. Sam and Tom spent long hours with Leo, learning. Sam began sketching plans for a sun porch on his own house, designed to trap passive solar heat, his first step towards a new way of thinking. Tom, the engineer, found a more satisfying puzzle than fault-finding. He began helping Leo fine-tune the system, his expertise finally serving harmony instead of conflict. Carl never apologized, but he stopped complaining. He was seen, one afternoon, walking the edge of his own property, looking at the stand of trees he'd always considered a nuisance, a new and unfamiliar curiosity in his eyes. The great freeze of that winter became legend, but not for its severity. It was remembered as the winter the laughter stopped, and the listening began. Leo's cabin, once a symbol of oddity, became a quiet beacon. It proved that warmth was not only about brute force against the cold, but about intelligent integration with the world. He had not beaten the winter. He had simply found a way to stay within the small, steadfast pocket of warmth that the earth, in its wisdom, had already been providing all along. And in doing so, he had thawed something far more frozen than pipes, the stubborn, human heart.